Welcome to this episode of Igniting Truth, where we bring the fire.
Bring the fire. Today, we're going to talk to you guys about mental health. A very important topic. I'll be honest, it's not the most easiest to talk about. I mean, even for myself, let me just relate to y'all this way. I'm diagnosed with bipolar type 2 disorder. I deal with ADHD on a daily basis. I mean, there's no reason I should be a successful business owner, but it's about how we look at mental health. I mean, do we look at these things we deal with and ask ourselves, how can we use those as gifts to make us successful? And how do we balance out the negative aspects of whatever those diseases are? Or, they're not something we just need to shove away in the closet. I mean, they're real. I deal with them. There's people around me that deal with them. We need to really look within ourselves and address those things. It's healthy. It's beneficial for rewiring our brains towards positive change and movement. So I'm really excited to start this episode. And in fact, we're so excited about this. This isn't just going to be an episode. This is going to be an entire series because it's such a multifaceted and intrinsic topic. So today, we're kicking off the series with talking about adolescent mental health. So, Eric and Clifton, tell me about how you set your kids up for success. How do you identify some of the mental struggles that they may be dealing with? And how do you nip some of those problems in bud so you can set them, your kids up to be able to overcome any of those mental challenges that come their way?
Yep. So the main thing is to really set that time aside, to listen to your children, to actually hear them out. Not only listen to them, but also watch their body language when they are talking with you. Because a lot of times, especially now, and I think Eric can relate as well, when it comes to teens, when it comes to our kids, they withhold a lot of information and they only give you bits and pieces. And it's almost like trying to solve a puzzle. So you have to take those bits and pieces, whether it's body language or certain words that they may use or a certain tone that they may use, in order to put the puzzle together to realize basically what's going on with that child, with that individual, because each child is different. Just like we are, we're all completely different. So one thing with having kids, you'll learn how to pick up on their characteristics and, how they communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I thought about in having two stepdaughters that are right in that teenage, range, one of them being 14, one of them being, about to be that sweet 16. It's interesting because it's almost like if I am talking, but you can't hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. So what happens is that they perceive things from what they see that you're saying instead of hearing what you're saying. And they see that off of your emotion instead of hearing it from what you're saying. So it's important. It's so important that we're understanding that it's not about the person that is speaking it when we're having this conversation, but the person that is receiving it through that conversation. Because when you say things that really attract their attention, then that's when you're able to have that back and forth conversation that's going to be productive. It's about finding out how to draw them in while you're calling them out. And especially when it comes to criticisms, you have to make sure that it comes from a place that they understand that the opportunity doesn't mean that you failed.
Mm-hmm.
It means that there are things that we're trying to implement that are going to help to make you better. And not that you're not good already, but we want you to be the best.
And Eric, you're so right. I mean, there's a lot of lessons that, I as an adult now realize. I realized what my parents were trying to communicate and where their heart was. But because they probably didn't communicate that the best way, I took it a completely different route than their intention most likely was. So I think, not just about what we're communicating is important, but you're so right. How we communicate it. How is that person perceiving it? Do they truly understand our heart and the heart of the message that we're trying to get across? And that's so important, because if that is not done in a manner that they understand, that person understands, and how their brain operates, a lot of times what you're trying to say can get completely missed.
Yeah.
Right. And that definitely happens a lot, because one thing that we have to realize that every not only child, but every person experience is completely different.
Absolutely.
So we could go through the exact same thing, but the way that you actually view it can be completely different than the way that I actually view it. So, and that's how kids are. And it took me a while. It took me a while from my oldest daughter down to my youngest daughter. With all 5 of my children, they're completely different. So once I really learned how to see that, I was able to communicate a lot better and listen and hear my kids out. Yep. And just understand that. Yeah. And I can go back to, you know, with the upbringing, dealing with a single mom and more of the Medea style. Yeah. If you get what I'm saying, I'm not trying to call her out. Don't want child, abuse or anything like that to come for her or anything like that. She'd probably kill me now. But yeah, like one time I called 911 on her at the laundromat. She spanked me, she told me, don't fool with the cookie. I ate the cookie, so then she had to pay for it. So she was very upset and she spanked me. So I went outside, and back in the day, they used to have things called payphones. And I hit 911. I was like, look, my mom just spanked me over a cookie, and sure enough, they showed up. Guess what she did? Took her belt off and whooped me in front of the cops. And the cops, good job. Now you can't do that. But back then, they clapped. They was like, good job. Yeah, listen to your mom. Don't call us again. But it's just different experiences like that. Now, like if you do that today in the way that a lot of our children is wired and what they learn in school, it's like that's traumatizing. That's abuse. And, yes, call 911. And like it can be blown just way out of proportion. So just different things like that, our upbringing, our experiences, and the way that we're actually wired. I believe you had said this earlier. It comes down to the way that you're actually wired, the way that you think about things,
Absolutely.
When it comes to processing.
So when we look at JCPP Advances, that's the Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. They have provided us statistics that we actually have that shows that depression has risen, especially after the pandemic, in women, over 42% in mothers. One of the things that we need to look at is okay is not okay. There's a quote that says, good is the enemy of the great. And so there are a lot of times where we have to take the opportunity to say that, yes, we're struggling with different things. And we as adults at times, I know that I can be frustrated. And I really have to think to myself, gosh, what am I frustrated about? So if we at the adult ages that we are have opportunities when it comes to how we emit our frustration, how we come to the table and have discussions as we're having now, what do we think it's like for children that are younger? And if our mothers are struggling at a level 42% or more, now we're looking at kids that are actually struggling more in and after the pandemic. We have to look at it like this. Everybody was so encaged during the pandemic, isolated, confined. So when you confined yourself physically, you're going to be confined mentally as well. Mm-hmm. So there were confinements put on mental strains that were processed that caused individuals to not know how to interact as well. Mm-hmm. And that is why we've seen some things grow and develop, like gun violence, different things of negative anger and aggression, people not knowing how to channel that frustration. And so when we look at mental health and we look at what's happening, it's the seeds that we have, the seeds that we're developing, the kids that are having opportunities, having situations where they don't know how to, gets back to that word, communicate, and let someone be there for you. Have an advocate, whether it's someone that is your blood, whether it's someone you love, you have to have someone you communicate with, because the moment you don't, you've broken the bridge to being able to reach the other side, to being the best part of you.
That's Absolutely. Real. I think the thing that, a lot of times, we three talk about is iron sharpens iron. A lot of times we're, bouncing ideas off each other. Or if we're going through a hard time, I know we come through and we support each other. We talk through things. I'll be honest, like sometimes you don't want to talk through it, but sometimes you just need to talk through it because it gets it out there, it gets it off your mind. Not only does somebody else know and can provide support during that time, but just talking about it, right? It just gets out there on the table, and there's something refreshing about that. And I don't know why. Almost like you lift a load off your own shoulders. So it works. I mean, just talk. Have somebody you trust that you can talk to about anything and everything. So, yeah.
Right. That's very important. And then just to kind of take this back, when it comes to children, you want to not force it out of them, but set up that atmosphere that they feel comfortable. It may be just going on a ride, or riding in the street, or going to go get ice cream. Set up that atmosphere that will open the door for them to actually begin to talk. Because you never want to pull it out that child. You're going to get 100% from that child when you bring them into their comfort zone. Absolutely. So it's very important as parents and as mentors to really come down to your child level so they can be very comfortable and opening up to you.
I think the big thing as adults is that we cannot assume that just because we're older than, some of these people that we mentor, that they're just going to automatically trust it. No, right. Trust is something that needs to be earned. Even as a mentor, who mentors other younger people, trust needs to be earned. And we can never lose sight of that, no matter, where we're coming from, where we are in life, who we are, like, who cares? I mean, that is an individual that deserves the respect.
Right.
Of allowing us to earn their trust.
Right.
Yeah, there is no trust without us.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, the U.S. and trust, it makes the word, right? And so it's a combined collaborative effort that we have to, and Cliff and Andrew, you guys said it, we have to make sure that the communication is one that is in their language.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time we're talking in languages that just aren't understand. They are foreign to youth. They are foreign to kids.
Absolutely.
It's almost like they think that we were never kids to begin with, right? Like,
you don't understand.
You don't understand me. Like, well,
I'm break it down to metaphors, man. I love metaphors, right? If you can figure out some kind of visual metaphor that you can apply a life lesson to and speak it into existence, metaphors are, some of my favorite ways to get truths out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about it too is that I was in a conversation the other night, and it went long into the morning almost. And the main thing that I realized was we were saying the same place we want to be, but in such a different way that we were both not getting to where we wanted to be because we were both arguing over points that were the battle and not the war.
Yep.
Right.
Wow.
So we would never get somewhere together if we couldn't come together first.
Right.
Absolutely.
We couldn't get in the same vehicle because we didn't get the key. We didn't get the key that we had to make sure that we both appreciated where we were coming from before we could get where we needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's major. That's definitely major. And, going back to communication and understanding when you get into situations like that, all of that comes down to really teaching, that child, your child, whoever you mentor as a child, really teaching them communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get down that communication skills and have a clear understanding, there'll be so much peace. But what happened when that is not solved is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds like, oh, that's a big word, but no, trauma. Why? Because they keep all of that locked in and it's constantly running through their mind. And before you know it, depression or anxiety, different things like that will arise, all because they don't know how to communicate or something wasn't solved and they feel misunderstood.
Yeah.
So the pandemic impact on youth and adolescents, when we look at mental health, children reported 44% of the increase. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but I want to focus in on what's really breaking down that amount. 26% of the increase of that was to PTSD symptoms. So when we're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, we often think of it as the longer you live life, the more you have potential ability to get PTSD. But that's not in the case of young children as well, because their impacts can be so quick, but their minds are not developed fully for some of the tragedies in the world. So when something hits them as an impact, it could be a loss of someone in their life. It could be something as small as, and it may seem small to us, but to them it's huge. If their vehicle goes down, if they're just starting to drive, or if something doesn't go well with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a boo-hoo that'll have you screaming boo-hoo, right? So there's so many different things that we have to think of when we look at the percentages. And that's why mental health, especially, we wanted to start with adolescents, because we want to make sure that we empower our kids for the future. They are the future. And that's why we're going to tell you, strike your match and ignite the truth.
Let's roll.
Ignite the truth. Disclaimer: child abuse is not something that we support. So if you are a child that is out there listening, or an adult that knows someone that is going through child abuse, please contact your local authorities, because at the end of the day, this is why we do this. And with me and Eric being fathers and Andrew being a great mentor, when it comes to kids and when it comes to teens, this is something that we stand strongly on, and that we're here to support and to guide you along the way.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode. For more content like this, or to begin your own podcasting journey, head on over to obsidian-productions.com.